Shalom. Let's deal with patience. One of the things that I get that many don't want to hear is that this generation in this time frame, people don't have patience. When you figure out something, a lot of times the thing about it is that it took you years to figure it out. And people want the answer to their questions, not even in minutes, they want it right now. They want it that immediate second that they ask. They don't want to go through the process. And so sometimes when you're explaining it, it sounds like you're going through a rabbit trail when actually you're being very direct on what you're saying. But they don't hear that. They don't hear that direct situation because they don't know the path that you took. All they know is that basically it sounds like you're doing a lot of talking, that you're actually, just rambling and running your mouth when in actuality, you're giving a thorough explanation. They don't want to accept that thorough explanation is giving them all the details that they need, but they don't want to do the work. They want basically, give me my information and give it to me right now. And it's like, that's what I'm doing. I'm actually giving it to you right now, but you want me to, I guess, make it brief, to shorten it up when there is no brief explanation to what you ask. It actually, it's details, it's length that's required in what you're asking. It may take more than one step to get to the result that they're asking for, and that they don't have patience for. I was having a discussion with someone and I was trying to lay out the answer. And gracefully they gave me that time. And it took about maybe 20 to 30 minutes actually to get them the answer. And when I finished, it was like, wow, that is the answer. But the problem was they were ready to cut me off in the first few minutes. And this is not any different than most conversations. Most people are ready to end the conversation right away if they don't feel that what's being said is of any value. How do you determine what's of value if you don't even listen? I get it. Nowadays, people will pop a video on you and say, go watch this link. And I'm not trying to send you to one of my videos or whatever. I'm actually willing to give you the time and explain it and talk through it. But that right there is not even what people want. That is like, nah, I'm not gonna give you my time. And I get it, but time is very valuable. So you definitely don't want to waste it. But we waste time with TV, we waste time with so many different things, talking on sports, talking on just literally politics, anything. And yet, when you say you want to know something that's in the scripture, the diligence is not there. So I've tried to explain to people many times that we look at the priesthood as Levitical, and that's because we've been only given the Levites. But then people will say, well, Melchizedek was a priest. And I keep trying to even tell them with that Melchizedek, Melchizedek, Melchizedek. That's actually king of righteousness or sovereign of righteousness. It's a title. But we've been told that Melchizedek, by the 66 books, is one person. But most people ignore and don't want to read outside of the 66 books. They take the collection that was given to us by the Nicaeans or the Nicaeans and say that's it. They were not even Israelites. And they thin the Bible down to 66 books. So let me I'm gonna see. I want to pull up something and stuff. So I got something in my notes that really it got me. So most of us have read Ezra. Most of us that consider ourselves any type of biblical student at all have read Ezra. And so in knowing that you've read Ezra, do you realize that Esdras, and Ezra are the same people? So when you go to the apocryphal books, it speaks of Esdras, and that man is the same man as Ezra. And then also, the person who wrote for Esdras or Ezra is Baruch. Baruch. So I want to go see if I can find something real quick. I'm gonna keep talking while I'm trying to find this, but it's interesting how we've been told certain things, and so we only go with that. And we limit ourselves because if you're even reading in the 16 books we call the Bible, you see that there are Bibles or books mentioned in there that are actually not in the 66. And some people will, basically knock those books and say, oh, throw those away or whatever. Like, okay, Yasher is one that I like. Jasher is what it's called. And I guess I do hear the context of saying that, the ones that they found now are bad copies. So let's roll with that. We can go with that. They're bad copies. But the problem that comes into play is that still it was mentioned in the book, so we just don't have access to the good copies, but there are good copies. Or there was literally another book. So if there's another book, we just don't have access. That doesn't mean that it's not real. Doesn't mean that we should not be looking for them. Okay, if the one we got now is fake, then we need to be looking for the real one. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go over to what I was looking up here, and I'm gonna share my screen really. So I'm gonna show where I'm at, and then because this is an apocryphal book that I'm gonna deal with, but let me see. Let me share my screen. The young man that I was talking to actually shared this with me, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So right here, I'm dealing with Second Esdras 14. It's in the Revised Standard Version. It's part of the Apocrypha, but I'm going down to verse 44. And let me see if I can even blow my screen up a little bit more. Okay. So it says here in 44, it says, so during the 40 days, 94 books were written. 94. We got 66. So that right there already shows you it's more than 66. 6. And when the 40 days were ended, the Most High spoke to me, saying, make public the 24 books that you wrote first, and let the worthy and the unworthy read them. But keep the 70 that were written last, in order to give them to the wise among your people. For in them is the spring of understanding or comprehension, the fountain of wisdom, and the river of knowledge. And I did so. So that right there was some great information when I was given by him. But he actually was able to listen to me on information. He was asking me about how David could be viewed as a priest. And so I had to run it down and show some things. So for one, Adam is the first priest. He was given dominion over the earth and was told to be fruitful and multiply. He was not made the king. He was subject to the Father, to Yahuwah, but he was given dominion over the earth. It's clearly spoken out in Genesis 1. He was created as the image of Yah and was given dominion. Everything was supposed to come through him. And that's just a grace patch. Come through him. He named the animals, all those different things. So then when you move forward and you go to Noah, Noah's given that same directive of being fruitful and multiply, have dominion of the earth. This is after the flood. So Noah was like an Adam. He was to be the image of the Most High. Now, Melchizedek, sovereign of righteousness. Adam was the first righteous man because he was the image of Yah. Corruption came, and he no longer was that. When everything was flooded, Noah was supposed to be that leader, that representation of righteousness. So he was the ruler or the sovereign of righteousness at that time. Many don't recognize or the other books, but the other book says that Shem was past that position. And they raised up Abraham as a child when he was sent away from his father's home because Nimrod wanted to kill him. So Abraham was trained up to be that next after Shem, sovereign of righteousness. He had all the wealth. He was the one that was given the promise from and the directive from Yah about his bloodline and of all he is being numerous. He had all the wealth. He had servants out of this world. He was able to defeat kings to get Lot back. We call him Lot. He even honored the current Melchizedek. Many don't realize Shem outlived Abraham. Count his days. But Abraham operated in that same unction, as they say. You move down the bloodline and stuff like that, and you come to Mizraim. Moses was the one that was called upon to be the leader of Israel. But Moses was one that was raised up in the home of Pharaoh 40 years. Many try to make it like Moses was unlearned, but no. Pharaohs knew multiple languages. They knew at least 50 languages. So a son of Pharaoh, which Moses would be considered, had to know a multitude of languages. The problem comes is that he was not regularly using the language of Israel. So for 40 years, he's in the house of Pharaoh, and then he has an interaction and kills an Egyptian to basically save an Israelite. So then he spends another 40 years after that in the wilderness, dealing with, Jethro, as well as him being the king of Ethiopia, but they don't speak of that in the 66 either. So that's 40 plus a whole nother 40. Many don't even acknowledge that Midian is a son of Abraham through Keturah. They disconnect so many different things that make the story have life and fullness. So you got Moses, 40 years in Pharaoh's house, and now he's amongst Midian, but he's not amongst Israelites. So he's not having a fluent conversation in the tongue that he's supposed to be, that's his nationality. He's more Egyptian than anything. So you have 80 years this man is not fluent or speaking the nation he belongs to's language. So when he gets sent back to those people, he's not comfortable. It's not that he doesn't know the language, but he hasn't spoken it. So that's where he talks about he has, a problem with his tongue. That man is fluent in Egyptian language, but to go speak to these Israelites that he's not been around basically 80 years of his life, he don't have that fluent flow. So he asks, hey, send me Aaron or give me someone. He didn't ask for Aaron, but he said, I can't do it. And that's when the Most High offered up Aaron. Aaron is what got the line linked to Levitical. It wasn't Moses, because Moses is a Levite. But if you look at it, Moses, where do you see Moses' children stepping into the priestly role? You don't see it. It's going through Aaron. But most forget Aaron basically cut himself off really from his very start. When Moses went up to talk to the Most High, Aaron basically submitted himself to the people and made them a golden calf. And Yah wanted them all destroyed. But Moses, being one that didn't want to lead position like that, people say he was humble. Yes, he was humble, but he pled for the life of Aaron. Many died that day, but Aaron was the one that led them. Aaron should have been the one that died. The lead person, the responsible party, is supposed to be the one die. But Aaron's life was spared. And Aaron went forth as the lead Levite. But he was subjected to Moses. But the problem comes in, he even had a problem with Moses. He and his sister challenged Moses' authority. Like, what makes you this? Moses had conflicts in his own home, and he had conflicts with his own tongue because he wasn't fluent, and he had to trust his brother to be his mouthpiece. The same brother who spoke against what he put forth in bringing forth the golden calf. The same brother who challenged his authority. The same brother that envied his position as lead over Israel. This person is what we look for the Levitical priesthood as in our example, but the problem comes many times they gave forth a bad example. People will point and say, Moses was a great example. He's, one of the fathers of our faith and all this, but Moses was not the lead Levite when it comes to that ministry or priesthood. Aaron was. Aaron was there because Moses required him. Problem comes in this. If you look at the text itself, Exodus 4:22 calls Israel all one son. One son. So if the one son is Israel's one son, that means that Israel is Adam, the image of Yah. That one son is the image of Yah. And he kind of shows you that when you go to Exodus 19:5 and 6, it says that all Israel was supposed to be the royal priesthood. All. I can show you that. Let's go share the screen. Go here. Sharing the screen there. And then I'm gonna go over here. Let's go to Exodus. See, first we'll go to 4:22. We'll go there first. And it says, and you shall say to Pharaoh, thus said Yahuwah, Israel is my son, my firstborn. Israel, whole nation being considered one son. All right, go to Exodus 19. 4, it says, and now, here at 5, we'll start at 5. And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a reign of priests. The whole nation a reign of priests, not just the Levites, and a set apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. See, and for clarity, let's go to for clarification. I'm gonna go over here to Isaiah 66 and show you the priesthood was not supposed to be just one tribe. It was supposed to be all of them. So when you go down here, Isaiah 66 or Yeshayah 66, and you go to verse 20, it says, and they shall bring all your brothers. This is all of Israel as an offering to Yahuwah out of all nations. So all of Israel is an offering. They all are pledged to Yahuwah on horses and in chariots and in litters, on mules and on camels, to my set apart mountain, Jerusalem, declares Yahuwah. As the children of Israel, it's the whole nation, bring an offering in clean vessel into the house of Yahuwah. So these brothers that are brought as an offering, they coming in clean vessels. They are now the clean vessels that are sacrificed or given, and they're coming into the house of Yahuwah. And from them, too, I shall take for priests, not just one tribe, but out of all of them for Levites, declares Yahuwah. So this basically is generic, not for the tribe itself, but it's calling all of those that are chosen the priesthood. I should take for priests, for Levites, declares Yahuwah. And I think that same thing could be found. I think that, let me see. It's other places that something similar to that can be found. Let me see. I'm gonna find something else and show you that same type of language being said. So I don't just have one witness, that I have multiple witnesses. So I want to give you another witness of that. So I'm not just speaking out of the side of my mouth. You know, let me see. Let me see. Okay. See if I can find another witness right away. I should have put that together, but I didn't. But there is another witness. You know, if I can't immediately think it up or whatever, I'm gonna show you something else though. Because there's even Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just go over here. I'm gonna just read something and show the leadership. Then it says, my mind ain't clicking like it's supposed to, so I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna go over to Revelation 7. You know, the Brit Hadashah. So let me go over there. Revelation 7. And so let me go there. And so Hazon or Revelation 7. And it says, and after this I saw four messengers standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another messenger coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the four messengers to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of all the tribes of Israel. So I'm going to pause right there. So many have this doctrine that only 144,000 make it into the eternal bliss, into the life after this life. So I'm not going to read every detail here, but it says the tribe of Yehuda, tribe of Reuben, so you got 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. They don't name. They got Manasseh as well as Manasseh in the place of Joshua, Joseph, and I think Dan is dropped off. But you see the different tribe names as you run down. But then you get down to verse 9, and it says, after this I looked and saw a great crowd, which no one was able to count. So you had the 144,000, but then after that, you see a great cloud. No one was able to count out of all nations and tribes. So it could have been like out of just the 12 tribes. Some people try to say this still are all Israelites. I don't agree with that. I believe that there is a bulk of them still Israelites, but then there are also sojourners in this. But those that would follow the Torah, but it's out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands. So you got the 144,000, then a cloud, which no one is able to count of people, crying out with a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Elohim who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. And, you know, it's amazing. Like I mentioned earlier, that Midian is a son of Abraham through Keturah. You also have Ishmael, son, and he had other sons. So Abraham is not an Israelite. Do I believe that he's in the kingdom? Yes. He's not an Israelite. Isaac, his son, is not an Israelite. So do I believe the kingdom is solely Israelites? No. Noah is not an Israelite. And so to think that only Israel is in the kingdom is kind of, ignoring the forefathers before them. And then to think that out of that bloodline, your limitations are just to one branch, when that one branch came from someone that had multiple branches. It's kind of interesting. Abraham had multiple branches, but also before him, Noah had multiple branches. Adam had multiple branches. Enoch would not be in that line. So you got to make it make sense. Seth would not be in that line. You got to make it make sense. You know, when that flood happened, there were 8 people that came out, and they were righteous enough to be there. Yes, Ham did some stuff or whatever. Even with that, people say he uncovered the nakedness. A lot of people had the notion and the thought that something homosexual happened, but they ignore that there's a whole section of the law that speaks to uncovering nakedness that shows that if you do something to a man's wife, you uncovered that man's nakedness. If you do something to his daughter, you uncovered that man's nakedness. So uncovering nakedness definitely does not always have to be specifically something directly at that person. It can also be something that happens to somebody that person is responsible for, somebody that person is covering. Let me let me answer this real quick. So, we got to have some more patience a lot of times and not expect to get every answer in at one moment. Sometimes you got to go through the process of studying. You got to be a Berean yourself. But when someone gives you information, a lot of times you got to digest it. Don't just scarf it down. You can't eat the whole buffet of text in one moment. And Bible shows itself to have precept upon precept that some information is here and then the conclusion of the matter is there. We have to read the whole story. We have to know the conclusion of the matter before we judge it. I think that's was that there's that in Ecclesiastes, is that, let me see what, let me look. I think that right there is actually Ecclesiastes. It might be 7. Is that 7? Let me see. No, is that 8? Oh, uh, my mind is flipping, but let me see. I'm gonna see if I can find that here. The conclusion. Let me see. Nope, it's actually 12:13. So I'm gonna share my screen on that and then I'm gonna get ready to wrap this up. So let me see. All right, let me share my screen. I'm thanking you for having patience with me. Cause see, a lot of times everything don't always come right out. Cause I still need to find that other text that shows that the priesthood is going to come out of all of Israel. So let me see. Say quote Koheleth or Ecclesiastes 12:13. It says, "Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil." So if that book of Jasher that's out there is not the real one, the real one's going to be exposed. A lot of other books, a lot of information is going to come out before everything's over. We're going to find out a whole lot of stuff. We've heard so many different conspiracies. It's like, okay, when the US went over to Iraq, they said they found the body of Nimrod and took some DNA. People say, "Oh, that's just a myth." I'm like, "Okay." See, if you read the text or whatever, you hear about this man of perdition or this antichrist. You gotta wonder, with some of the acts and stuff that it speaks of him doing if he's not going to share DNA with Nimrod. He definitely has, from what the text says, the mind of Nimrod. His thoughts will be like that, wanting to have dominion, and not through Torah and not through the means of Yahuwah, even wanting to surpass Yahuwah. See, Yahusha sits in the seat of Adam and sat in the seat of Adam, but he's not Yahuwah. He's one that is subject to Yahuwah, just like Adam was, just like Noah was, just like Moses was, just like, before that, Abraham was, just like Dawid was. So, before I conclude this, Dawid operated at a time frame when the people chose Shaul as their leader. They didn't want a Levitical priest anymore. Remember, most of the prophets were Levitical priests. They didn't want Samuel and his sons to lead over them because Samuel had been leading righteously. He was a leader of righteousness, but his sons were not. And they said, give us a king. Yahuwah always wanted to be king, and he set priests to deliver his word. They didn't want priests anymore. They were tired of the priests because the priests became rulers and lords over them, and a lot of times they operated in wickedness. They didn't do what thus says Yahuwah. So he allowed them to choose Shaul, a Benjamite. So their Melchi was a Benjamite, but the man was not righteous. So Yah raised up a man like him, a Melchi that was righteous. Dawid was righteous up until the point that he did what he did with Bathsheba. But even with that, the man saw his error when Nathan chastened him with, telling him a parable about someone else. And what did Dawid do? He strived to correct the situation that he had did wrong. He made error in. He strived to reconnect to his righteousness. He was a Melchi that operated in righteousness. He was a Melchizedek. He fit the title. Yahusha, who's a Yahudim, just like Dawid, a Melchi. And see, if you really want to be funny and go back though, and I might should take this time. Many don't remember, and I might have to text this to the young man. Aaron was supposed to be Moses' second, but he cut up. So guess who Moses' second was? Yahushua. And who is Yahushua? The son of Nun, Yahudim. Hmm. All right. Think about that. Abiyahu, thank you for this opportunity to talk to your people. Maybe they have patience to listen to this, patience to even converse with me. Let's reason together. I love the opportunity to sharpen my iron with someone. So we can have dialogue on this. You don't have to agree with what I say, but come up out of your cognitive dissonance. Come up out of your comfort spot and at least have dialogue. And maybe a seed can be planted in one of us that'll grow and bring forth further illumination and revelation so we can get closer to the will of Yah here on earth through us, his sons. Yada Yahuwah. Shalom. Yada Yahuwah. Shankuya, One Vision Ministry.